at LUNA Imaging, we've kind of taken on IIIF and trying to see how it fits into our application as in conceptually with IIIF and also functionally. So we've tried to take certain concepts that we have within our application and apply them to the presentation API. And a couple of things that came up are we first initially came out and wanted to just make content show up in one of the viewers like Mirador. And so we did that, and what that was based on was a search result. But in reality, when you look at the presentation API, and you start talking about a single item, you're talking about a single object in a system or a collection. And so that's not a proper representation of IIIF in the presentation API. So when I do a search result, I want to actually get some content back, and I want to be able to take that and be able to open it in some type of viewer or make use of it some other way in IIIF. So what we did, we thought of the concept as sharing, and we wanted to be able to share content that's in the LUNA system. And so whenever we come up onto a result, I just search for damage inside of the Shakespeare library, Folger Shakespeare library. And what we will get is basically you get two things. You get just a link to our site, and then we also generate a URL that creates a particular tokenized link to that same content, so you can load it inside of a IIIF viewer or other system that can read the presentation API. And these are all based on the concept of collection, at least in the search results. So when I go into the universal viewer, I then can load. Let me just go back and actually load one in here, the same one, but let's go ahead and load this in. This will load a single item in the universal viewer, but on the left-hand side, it'll represent the single objects, which are each individual manifest. So you can go to any one particular object. Then it, of course, has all the descriptive metadata along with the object itself, and it represents that individual manifest. So the important part, what I'd like to kind of express to the community is what we've kind of done is try to use content that actually is a search result so that we can kind of share it. One of the limitations currently is the only viewer right now that I know of that will handle this is the universal viewer, and it is a little bit restricted in that it represents the objects as individual items in this list as a title, so you don't have a visual browsing method to go through it. But I think we're looking at that too. So let's see, that's not very exciting. It's a back page, but let's see. Anyway, we don't have to go through Universal Viewer too much. I just wanted to express that's one part of using content within a search result. The next one I wanted to represent is if you are looking at a set of content and you bring it up, and let me just kind of bring up this iconic image from the NASA images collection. We want to share that. We can get IIIF URL. And this represents a single object. So whenever we're looking at a single object, this will pass on a single manifest. And of course, I've already opened it in the Mirador, and then you can actually bring up that single object in Mirador or in the universal viewer. So that represents single object here. Again, this brings up the full metadata that's relating to that particular object from that collection, and it works within the viewer. The third element what we actually wanted to represent is a group. So let me bring up this other one here. So this is the David Rumsey map collection, and we have this concept of media groups, and it represents content that may be coming from whatever a client kind of identifies as important information. Let's see. Oops, sorry, not spelling right here. And if I bring up a particular group, I can then, now this may come from one or many collections, so it may not, within the Luna system, you can have multiple collections. I'm just bringing up from a single one, but once I go to share again, I get a group of content, and actually we're representing the group based on a particular group ID within our system on the particular, at that particular site. So if I bring that up and I go back to Universal Viewer, and let me just get another URL. And this will bring up the content once again, single thumbnail, and then the index of content, and I could go to different objects. And we're basing this index on the title of the object, so that at least you can kind of see it that way. We eventually want to get to a thumbnail view of this, but this at least gives you a representation of these different objects. We saw some kind of dilemmas within the community that we were seeing when we were looking at the objects that are represented in examples that in the Mirador. A lot of them are single objects, but then we ran into content like this where it's actually representing individual objects, and this is how we originally thought of using Mirador, being able to send it across, but Mirador only reads right now a manifest. And so this was what we're concerned about, is we want to make sure that, you know, Mirador is a great tool and we really like it, and we just found that a single object was difficult for us to interact with. I mean, it works nice, and I think it probably can be managed a little bit different from our perspective. But within Luna, those are the things that we're actually trying to do. We're trying to, initially, this is our first phase of this, is our second phase, is being able to share that content. So I think that's really what I wanted to show. So any collection that we have in our version 7.2.15 plus, which we're actually, you know, the system as it advances will have more features, but anything past that, they all can be shared within the IIIF community. So now maybe I can ask if there are any questions out there.